Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to my Gran Turismo movie review. Now, just a quick heads up, I'm not going to put any trailer footage or any footage from the film actually in this review, mainly because I want to kind of stay clear of any copyright strikes and such. I was kind of looking around if we could get away with it, but then I kind of read a bunch of stories of people using sort of trailer footage and stuff and, you know, getting themselves striked, and that's just not the route I want to go down. Now, in terms of the Gran Turismo movie, we're going to jump straight in. I actually watched this at the beginning of August. I want to say the 9th, at my local cinema. I paid off my own back to go and watch it. No private screen or anything like that. Just kind of got in there early. Just before the delay, I actually booked my ticket, I think 2 days before. And I did manage to see it in early August. I know after that, it was kind of showed kind of early around in some cinemas and some movie theatres and stuff. And then obviously it got its sort of full release, I believe, on the 28th of August. So I've had a good time to kind of think about what I actually feel about the Gran Turismo movie. And do you know what? I'm pleasantly surprised. It's more, I'm kind of happy with it than I'm actually disappointed with it, which is definitely not the way I was originally thinking I was going to actually kind of feel about this film. So I'm going to try and break it down into the different acts of the movie. So I'm going to be straight up honest here. Spoiler warning. There will be moments that I will discuss certain, specific parts of the movie. I'm sure most of sort of the diehard Gran Turismo fans have probably seen it by now. If you haven't, I do fully recommend it. Most of this, though, is kind of common knowledge, considering it is sort of a bit of a biopic in a way. So we're going to start off with the main man himself, Jann. Obviously a very successful racing driver, went through the GT Academy and then kind of just did it for real. The whole kind of, I guess, GT movie is sort of based off his rise from sim racer to doing it for real and being rather successful along the way. So let's start off with him. How good is he portrayed in this movie? Now, this is where my main criticisms come in, that it is rather quite cringy in the kind of first, I'd say 30 to 45 minutes. Just some of the dialogue doesn't quite sit right with me. Seeing a bunch of product placement for Gran Turismo 7 in the first half of the movie really kind of sort of takes you out of it. I know kind of they had the task of sort of getting all of these characters involved and introducing them and sort of taking them all through their journey, and a lot of the cringy moments early on actually come through this character, and that is me being completely honest. Just some of the dialogue, the way they text, the sort of really heavy product placement of Gran Turismo 7 really just feels quite off, and I think that's mainly because I've known about Jann for a very, very long time, and to see everything based around Gran Turismo 7 and the modern phones and the modern wheel setups and stuff that just essentially weren't around when he was actually doing this quite a while ago, does kind of just not sit quite right with me. But then at the same time, it's a movie, there's going to be a bit of leeway. Obviously with stuff, they're obviously going to want to get product placement in there for Gran Turismo 7, but it does make sense. Then you've got the other characters. Obviously you've got the main guy that does all the Nissan Academy stuff and sorts that out. His introduction's rather quite straight to the point. He essentially approaches Nissan in Japan and says this is what he wants to do, and he somehow gets accepted to do it. Turn a bunch of sim racing kids, as this sort of movie refers to him a lot, and obviously turn them into real racing drivers after putting them through essentially a big whole test through the Nissan Academy. Then we have the engineer, obviously played by I think is it David Harbour. I'm pretty sure that's who it is. One of my favourites from the likes of Stranger Things and stuff. Again, another big name, obviously alongside Orlando Bloom. So there is some really big names in this, and again, he's kind of pretty old school. He had a bit of a history with Le Mans and a big crash that kind of put him off racing. And originally he does work for the kind of rich kids team where it's kind of you paid your way into the pay drivers of the sport, as most of us would say, instead of sort of earning their place. And eventually he just kind of flips and joins along with the likes of Orlando Bloom's character to go ahead and do this Nissan Academy thing. And at first obviously he's kind of like, no, I'm not doing it, this, that and the other. strapping into a 200-mile-per-hour race cars is just an absolute joke sort of thing. But he does come around eventually, and to be honest, both of them are great through the entire film. And the guy that plays Jann was also actually fantastic. He was much better in the second half of the film. Now, one of the main things that really just kind of made me just kind of cringe a little bit inside was the sort of police chase bit where it starts bringing up the Gran Turismo graphics and stuff like that. Now, I did get a bit cringed at that. It just kind of made me chuckle more than anything. But eventually it kind of, he gets invited to this thing, and it's a bit kind of, the product placement's there for Gran Turismo 7, but he's kept his account logged in at this cafe, and all of a sudden he's got to then rush over, kind of chucks down this job after, kind of wrecking his dad's car after the police chase, and, goes ahead, does well, and qualifies, and gets into the Nissan Academy alongside another bunch of drivers, where it kind of progresses into sort of the second act of the film, which is all surrounding the Nissan Academy. And this is where it kind of starts getting a bit more I guess high level in terms of just how it is. There's a bit more pace to the movie at this point. There's a bunch of car scenes and stuff. They're obviously in a bunch of Nismo, just a bunch of GTRs obviously through the Nissan Academy, and Nismo sponsors everywhere. And this is where my first bit of criticism kind of comes in. It says it's at Silverstone, but it's not. It's actually on the Hungaroring, but backwards. I think there's a part where he does kind of crash the car, and I don't know. It's just some of the where they say it's the course that it is, and it just isn't, and you can tell. It really kind of bothered me, and this is something that is my main criticism of the movie. I get maybe budget and maybe shooting time kind of put an end to that. It would have been a lot of traveling to get all of these footage, but when it's so obvious that it's not Silverstone and it's clearly the Hungaroring backwards, just really didn't sit well with me. It really kind of annoyed me through this part of the movie, and it is so blatantly obvious as well. But overall, the driving parts are really good. Seeing, some of the other guys fail and how he got his way through, and then he kind of crashes the car when it turns out he was right about the brakes fading and such. It was all kind of good, and it starts bringing this bond together with Jann and obviously David Harbour's character as they kind of go through this part of the movie. And in the end, he does get that spot, winning the race by like a fraction of a second. They have to go and check it. It was all very well put together, and it does turn the pace of the movie up a little bit. And then obviously we go into his shot at being a real racing driver, which is where the movie just kind of turns itself up and where it is actually best at. It's what you've seen a lot of in the trailer, but to be quite honest, if you've watched the trailer, you kind of know what to expect. It almost felt like a lot of what was shown in the trailer was kind of just shown straight away, so a lot of the bits that should have been really impactful or really quite shocking just kind of wasn't as shocking as they actually were, considering we've kind of seen the trailers a million times and we know what's going to happen. So it starts out of the Red Bull Ring. It's a pretty cool sequence, and for me, this is where the movie is really, really good. It's well shot. The only kind of bits that really put me off in terms of the racing scenes, which are the main meat of this movie, is when it kind of brings the Gran Turismo overlays on, and it sort of, cuts back to really obvious CGI. And to be quite honest, I'm not a massive fan of the CGI in this movie at times. It felt really kind of forced, and it just didn't look quite right. I'll kind of talk about that a little bit later on towards the end of this review. But the movie does really turn itself up. So he's got a season. He's got to essentially, I believe, get a podium in this season to then continue into the bigger leagues. And it basically doesn't start well. Obviously, the beef with, sort of the pay driver really does kind of shine through in this part of the movie. That will kind of die off later. So there's a couple of, sort of rivals as such. You've got the gold Lamborghini, which we've seen in the trailer. There's an Audi R8 with sort of like a pretty rainbowy sort of livery to it. It's the white one. You'll kind of know it. And this is kind of where some of my criticisms with, while Gran Turismo movie has a bunch of up-to-date GT3 cars, the Gran Turismo game doesn't. So yeah, I know that's nitpicking and it's unrelated to the movie, but yeah, in terms of the racing sequences, then they are very, very good. The first race is actually really good. He obviously has his spin, doesn't end up making it. It was doing really well, actually quite well. You've got the typical sort of, I guess, feeling around the sort of, garage and such, that this is just a kid that does sim racing. He's going to be no good. That does start fading away the further they go into the movie. And I actually think it's a good thing that that kind of stigma does fade away, because I think most of these days people don't necessarily feel that way. At the end of the day, you know, okay, it's still a game at the end of the day. I don't care what you say. You are still playing a game, whether you're racing a sim racer or not. It's still a game, but yes, there is potential to be good at them and move into, you know, real world motorsport. We've seen it many times at this point. Just to kind of see the stigma there, though, and I guess it was quite not as done when this kind of whole thing was actually going off with Jann. You know, it does kind of do my head in a little bit, because it's like, well, at this point it's obvious that people can go from sim racing and actually do pretty well in motorsport. Not everyone, but there is a few that have done quite well at it. You know, Igor Fraga is another name to mention. Obviously Jann had a decent career. A bunch of the other Nismo guys, the Nismo Academy guys over the years, did have decent careers as well. So yeah, it's good to kind of see that fade away, but there is that kind of stigma at first with sort of the pit crew and stuff. And then it kind of goes through to one of the sort of final events, and there's some awesome crash sequences in it. Now that's when the CGI is actually at its best, where it feels more lifelike and more destructive in terms of the crashes. So it'll sort of, you know, after the first race it kind of skips through a bunch, and then he has to get that podium, and what would you know, in the final race of the season he goes ahead and gets it. So yeah, you know, there's an awesome crash sequence in there, I think between a Porsche and the Lamborghini, where he just doesn't brake and he just goes straight into the back. But in terms of, you know, atmosphere and sort of when I was at the cinema and the sound around it, it was absolutely awesome to see. But yeah, he does eventually get his podium. That was great to see. So obviously he gets a contract for the more bigger leagues, and that will kind of take us into sort of the second half of the movie, where the Nürburgring accident happens, and it's very well shot. Even my partner, she went on to say, like, she kind of, you know, got goosebumps when it happened, and it was a very well shot scene. Just seeing sort of the front end of the car, realize that it's not going back down, it's going up, and then the huge accident again. That is when the CGI is at its best, to be quite honest. It was well shot. Eventually he does go ahead and return, and it's a really nice moment. I actually felt, you know, really, I don't know, in a weird way, quite emotional. It did kind of work that he went back, and, you know, he then went for a nice lap, and there's all these kind of, you know, visuals. You've got the Nürburgring at night and stuff, and at sunset, in the Porsche, and it's really well shot. Like, I cannot lie, it's one of my favourite moments of the movie. It's really stuck with me. So the crash is in there. Obviously it did happen. There is footage out there. I'm not going to put it in because, again, the whole thing that it surrounded it, obviously the death of a spectator and such, but it is out there if you want to go and see it for yourself. In terms of the crash, it was really well done in the film, and I really like the part after where he kind of goes back with David Harbour's character and sort of says, you know, you kind of find out more about what happened to him in Le Mans, and, you know, how he doesn't want the same to happen to Jann. And it was a really nice moment, to be quite honest. Then we move in to the final bit, which is Le Mans, and to be quite honest, it's again well done, but the track doesn't look quite right, and the CGI sections really don't look right. There's a part where it kind of builds the car around him, and then it shows you the car at Le Mans, and it's clearly CGI, and it's just like, well, how come you can do the crash part so well, however these kind of bits that have sort of gone from in-game to more real world, which is supposed to be real world at this point, just doesn't look right. And Le Mans itself just for some reason just doesn't look right. Again, I'm pretty sure it's not shot correctly. I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong here, that they didn't actually go to Le Mans to shoot this. Overall though, it kind of ends there. He eventually gets on the podium. It's a really nice moment. There's a good part in the race where, you know, there's a big fireball wreckage. You've probably seen it in the trailer, but again, because we've seen it in the trailer, it takes away the shock value, and it's not as kind of, you know, hot in the mouth part as they kind of crash at the Nürburgring. But it is a great part of the movie. It's just all about pure racing. There's a few moments that still made me kind of cringe around when the Gran Turismo graphics kind of came in and stuff. But apart from that, overall, the Gran Turismo movie was actually fantastic. It exceeded my expectations, and it seems like fans of the series are kind of the same way. I believe it was sat at something like 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, whereas the critic score is around about 70% or something. So it does seem like it is appealing to fans. It was much better than expected. The director obviously did District 9, you know, way back when. I believe it was District 9 or District 11, one of them. But again, that was a great movie, and one that's kind of always stuck with me, and I don't think they did a bad thing by, you know, kind of bringing him on board to get him to shoot it. In all honesty, It's his first racing movie, and he did a great job of it. So the Gran Turismo movie, overall, would I recommend it? Yeah, 100%. It was actually really good. It exceeded my expectations. There's a few bits of cringe there, but if you can get past that, there is a brilliant racing movie to be had. And that is my final thoughts on this movie. So yeah, go ahead, check it out. Let me know what you thought of the movie down below, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care, guys. Peace.